welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm your Scarlet Witch, Ian Carlos Crawford, and joining me is the author of The Darkhold,
Adam Sass.
Hi, Adam. We're here for the finale.
Ian, we made it. All of my theories turned out to be true. No, I'm just kidding. We're so excited here because we've got some oh my god, these guests are so incredible. So I'm going to not waste any more time. I'm going to introduce them because it was Agatha all along.
That's me, Misha Osherovich.
Hi,
Hi,
Misha.
Misha.
I'm such a big fan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Welcome to the show that I've been on. Yeah.
Fair enough.
And then we are joined by the Grief Hoodie.
Hi, I'm Monica Breen.
Hi, Monica. I'm so excited you're on too. And then last but not least, we have Jimmy Woo's Safety Pin Flourish.
Hi, I'm Alex Kack.
Hi.
Alex, welcome. Oh my god, what a crew today.
Yeah, we got a pretty good group. We are here to discuss the WandaVision finale.
Yes.
I'm going to start off. I'm going to get kind of how you all felt, like your first thoughts after watching it, because I don't want to be like the negative one. I didn't love it as much, but Monica, what was your first impression after you watched it?
I love stories of grief. So that by the end, when she said goodbye to her family, I was just a puddle. Then I watched it again and I had my critiques, but my first thought was like, oh, poor Wanda. And I love that. And if something makes me cry, and especially to be perfectly honest, I wasn't a fan of those two in the films.
Okay.
So like that love story kind of blew me away that they pulled that off.
I definitely agree with that. Misha, what did you think?
I am definitely coming at this from like a technical standpoint. I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm viewing the show as both. I will say that everything was tied up and or set up for future stuff in a very neat package with a bow. I don't actually love that. I kind of like when things get a bit messy, but it's Disney Plus. It's going to be formulaic. So there was a catharsis. It was great that everything was tied up with a bow. Do I wish it was messier? Yes, I do.
Adam, I know we kind of discussed this, but you definitely liked it more than I did, right?
For sure. I mean, I'm honestly frankly, I'm a blend of Monica and Misha here because I sobbed. I was inconsolable the first viewing, and then the second viewing, I was still inconsolable. Yeah, I have not reached a moment yet where I've reached a critique level. But I do the more I talk about it with people, the more I talk about it with people, the more I realize that I was. There's some stuff to critique, obviously, but I think also I think personally my personal feeling is that creatively, adventurously they peaked in episode 5, and then a lot of that afterwards was kind of taking it into a more traditional MCU house style, which no one should be surprised happened. It was after episode 5, which was brimming with completely unexpected stuff left and right, not just the Evan Peters reveal, but everything from, her rolling the credits over Vision while he's trying to confront her to her storming out of the Hex and kind of really changing the game there. I think that was when it was really, really, really at its highest, playing with our expectations and really probably setting itself up for people to be disappointed in the finale because there wasn't Mephisto and all these other people who were saying we're gonna show up. People really were thinking Doctor Strange and Professor X and Mephisto. I was really, we don't because I think with folks, I'm I thought after the fall the pushback of Rise of Skywalker that we would not be super on board seeing these powerful women stories being oh, there was some male devil person behind it all.
100%.
So they think this was great.
I actually couldn't agree with you more in that. I mean, what you just explained is kind of what I view as the two camps of WandaVision. There's the people that don't know the Marvel Universe as well, like myself, that are really in it for the genre-bending art form of this show, which has kind of created almost a new kind of TV show. And then there's the folks that are kind of in it for the Marvel storylines. I loved that episode for exactly the reasons you're talking about, because looking at it as an artist, I'm like, holy shit, this is so many things at once, and it's actually being done really well. But as opposed to being super invested in the Marvel Marvel of it all.
So I will give you my slight counterpoint. I do think the grief stuff still 100% worked. I so I've been thinking about this with like expectations versus like what you're gonna get, and I don't know. I don't know that it was the fan theories because half of the fan theories I found very grating. But I felt like the show itself kept giving us reveal after reveal and like huge moment, and for me, it felt like the last two episodes slowed down a little bit, and I didn't love the second to last episode as much. There were beats I loved, but I felt I don't love a slowed down penultimate episode. And then I felt going into this, they're just like the only really reveal we got was like, oh, that dude was just Ralph, and it wasn't Quicksilver at all, and it was
Yeah.
just like a red herring, and I don't
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
red herrings. I don't I know that they have said casting Emma Caulfield was a red herring, and for me, I'm like, well, that's cheap. Don't give me red herrings. I don't need like misdirections in a like show like this. Like it isn't a horror movie or a murder mystery. It's like I don't know that's the stuff that bothered me because if we're gonna have these cool reveals, then like keep to them. And it also felt like the TV show we just dropped to the TV show aspect, which I don't know how they could have incorporated into the end, but I felt like it was just dropped too quickly and easily.
They literally mentioned it once in the end. Now that
Yeah.
Wanda has canceled all her programming, we, the military, can, do things. I'm like,
Right.
Yeah.
That's not to say because that's like my critique, right? But it's still enjoyable. I still think this show definitely was like one of the best series I've watched in a really long time.
Yeah, and took a lot of risks. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like I accept the fact that at the end of any Marvel story there will be like hand fighting and
Yeah.
and powers and explosions and so I kind of feel like that's just what they do. If you
Yeah.
make me cry in a Marvel movie, that's when it does something special.
I would love to say that makes it something special, but I cry very easily. So
The way I felt about Wanda early on and the way I feel about her now, just the writer in me, and is so impressed that they pulled it off.
yeah,
That I care about, I will give my life for her. I love her. I love what she wanted. I feel like she feels like someone who lost every single person in her life cumulatively.
Yeah.
With the tail end being watching the love of her life be separated on a slab. Like it was kind of violent for me in just like thinking about her looking down. So I just like that they emotionally went there, which some Marvel movies generally avoid that.
Yeah, I mean this story definitely had more nuance, I would say, than a lot of other Marvel like stuff. And I'm a Marvel fan, right? Like I've been reading these comics since I was a kid. Like I'm all in on all this shit, but I will say, lots of times it's just like, cool, I'm enjoying these characters say sassy things to each other and then have cool fights. And that there's nothing wrong with that. But I like that this I don't know. I mean, but prior to this, I would have said Jessica Jones and Daredevil were like my favorite shows that they had done. And now this is like for sure my favorite thing. But I don't even think I don't think those Netflix shows are something Disney would be letting Marvel do again, right?
No.
I mean, Jessica Jones is about rape.
Yeah.
This season. So like I don't think Disney Plus goes there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't yeah.
But I mean, you could argue grief is also a complex adult, emotional
No,
cycle, and
it's funny. It's like the Pixar emotional universe.
Right.
I will acknowledge that. Yes,
Yeah.
it is it's a Pixar accessible emotion.
That's
Inside Out
like
dealt with it too.
grief kids can deal with. Like I feel like sex is where they never go.
Yeah.
It's definitely kind of a stark line, I think between the two. But I'm really curious now that they have all those characters back, what they're gonna do with them, and if they're gonna try to incorporate them into this format.
Right, and they're opening up this new horror world, and it's hard to think about like PG horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like they're doing Blade, as part of it.
Right.
I also like. I kind of default back to like there was that Jimmy Kimmel bit when Infinity War came out where he was like, children love superhero movies, but I don't know how they feel about watching or intergalactic genocide. It's not very fun to see Spider-Man die.
Yeah.
That's
And
true.
well,
My goodness.
yeah, I mean that was pretty. Like I think that as a concept, the idea of mass death, extinction, and genocide is like it's pretty heavy for any movie-going audience to deal with. So maybe we'll get there, kind of.
Well, maybe. I mean, I went with my youngest son who like lost his mind at the end of that movie because it was like my childhood is killed.
Yeah.
My entire childhood has been decimated. And then I said, there are more movies being slated, so they're not dead. They're not all dead. They can't be dead.
It's funny. I saw that with I actually saw Infinity War with my mother, who was in her 70s, and she didn't realize that it was like she kind of thought like, oh, I don't like that. That's how it ends. That's it. That's the end of these movies. I was like, well, there's more, but like I'm sure they'll come back. But also, she was like, "Are you okay? You cried a lot when Spider-Man disappeared."
I'm telling you, like it's my husband and I are going through the MCU again because he really has only seen like a few of them here and there, and getting to Infinity War after seeing the bulk of WandaVision and having gone through the last year the way we have,
Right.
it was so traumatizing again. Like it was really. I was texting Ian. I was telling you. I was like, this is highly upsetting, and I don't know why. I'm like seeing this for the fourth time, being more upset than I ever have been at this ending.
Yeah, it's wild. I think I had told you too, Adam. I wrote an article, like an explainer on like for New Now Next. I wrote like, oh, this is like what happened leading up to WandaVision, and I actually did rewatch the end of Infinity War to remind myself like the order of events, and I was like, holy shit, going back to this, like that was upsetting watching in theaters, but going back to it now with like watching, I think at that point I'd watched half of WandaVision. I was like, I was like a crying mess watching her have to kill Vision, and then Thanos come in and bring him back to life just to kill him again. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think I think talking about this in sort of this Pixar way, I feel like to Marvel's credit, there is sort of a slightly more aged up Pixar mentality to a lot of these themes because watching these movies back to back again, it really is like some of them talk about very important, timely stuff in this sort of ice cream surrounded way. Like watching The Winter Soldier again with knowing that it came out like in 2014 before it was like pretty in vogue to be like, the evil people, the Nazis are in the government. Like that was that was a wild idea in 2014, and now I'm just watching it being like, how did they know?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they didn't know. They just showed you what would happen if we expected the worst of the government and politics.
Right.
It's true. Yeah, but
now
I think
we can.
These different ways of taking like a big pop thing and being like, hey, here maybe it's like too much to like on its face deal with this issue directly one to one, but if you kind of process it through this way, which was it's a very Buffy thing, it's a very like just a hey, we're gonna like talk about this really issue that like maybe it's going to help us digest this a little better and a little more and metabolize this into our brains a little bit better to kind of couch it in all of this fantasy.
But I mean, that's what comics have always been. Comics have always been, even when back in like all these original like the Supermans and the Spider-Mans, they've always been like vigilante justice, very accessible ways, often queer avatar ways to talk about pop culture and big world issues.
I mean, I think that's kind of like the classic. I was kind of gonna say the same thing. It's like it's the thing that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done well and better than its competitors or like the past iterations is that it managed to actually hold true to I think what the core of what Stan Lee was kind of doing at that time, 50, 60 years ago, which was trying to tell both very human stories and very societal stories through this really over the top fantasy realm. And they don't, I don't think they're not as ambitious as I think he was at his peak, right? Like I think they're not throwing the same type of like really controversial punches that he did in comic books sometimes in the 60s. But they're still doing something very real, and WandaVision is maybe the most personal version of that. But I think a lot of the movies have some note, whether it's something that's kind of big and kind of political or worldly, or something that's very intimate. There's something in there that's far more than just like muscles and explosions.
Oh, 100%. And I think they, like Pixar movies, work on two levels because I think the experience of watching something like WandaVision is. I don't know that little kids were having the same fun watching it or same emotional impact watching it, but it could still be fun. It's
Yeah.
just, it's like up to me. That beginning of that movie killed me. It ruined the movie going experience because I was still sobbing an hour later.
I listen, I feel you, Monica. I have a lot of feelings, so I'm one of those people that's always like crying at fucking everything. So but so I feel like we should get into the episode itself. This one picks up right where the previous one left off. Agatha's there with the kids on the like magic leashes or whatever.
Mhm.
I will say I really towards the end I got a little bit like, all right, they're just blasting powers, but like at the start I did really I liked this shit, and I liked the
Yes.
kids get released, and I love when she's like, go to your room,
100%.
and then throws a fucking car at Agatha. That's like a very good visual. I really liked that.
Mm-hmm.
So you get those like Wicked Witch of the East shoe moment.
Yeah.
Under the
Yeah,
house. Ugh.
I loved it.
I will say I wasn't quite clear on what Agatha's like. So she wanted to steal her magic, but like I didn't know like how it's like. Is it just like every time Wanda uses it, she was stealing it? Like I didn't quite.
I think it seemed to me that anytime Wanda expelled it outwards, like tried to aim her chaos magic at something or someone, if Agatha was around, Agatha could absorb it and therefore steal it.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like, so sometimes it blasted her, sometimes she, like, basically, like, she had to catch it. Like, so
Yeah, she had
sometimes
to
it got
catch
her,
it.
sometimes she, like, was able to catch it.
And I also will say, if me becoming a witch would mean that my eyebrows immediately became darker and more defined when my costume got put on, I would absolutely become a witch.
She, like full Michelle Visage, like could never, like, just the drag mother, like, her.
It made me so happy. I would be remiss if I didn't say that it was one of my favorite parts of the episode.
So then White Zombie Vision shows up. We see him in the reflection. This scene I legit gasped when he like touched her face. I got worried. And then he does try to like freaking smush her skull.
Yeah, he tried to Blade Runner her a bit.
Yeah, I was like,
this crack at the beginning before you realized what was happening. That was so good.
Yeah, it was like her face like did a very upsetting thing. Like it didn't look like, oh no, she's just being like it. Like her face kind of contorted a bit. Like it was like really like, oh,
her eyes looked like they could almost pop out.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, that like definitely had me like, I was like, oh no. And then my man Vision came in and saved her, which Vision, again, I mean, you said this, Monica, like I liked those characters, but I didn't really like care much. But this show has made me care so much for the two of them. It is ridiculous because I was like, oh, he's such a good guy. He's coming in, this like robot husband. I love him.
So good. So good.
Right. And like, even though he just found out, like, I guess technically, and that would have been like, maybe 20 minutes ago, he found out about everything.
Right.
And he's like, you know what I mean? And he's still like, no, don't touch Wanda. This robot version of me is going to get its ass kicked. And like, they have their Superman type fight.
Yes.
CG Palooza, like, really, I mean, I think they weren't kidding when they said there was like just an absolute wall-to-wall ton of CG in this episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
So much CG.
I think the effects worked though. I mean,
it was good. It was like just very ambitious. I mean, you're having these sort of like kind of roving. It did. I think Ian, you were saying at some point. I mean, I don't want to skip ahead too much, but it did feel a titch video game, which I said,
Yeah.
I love that it felt like a video game. This was definitely like a Agatha, White Vision both had like a health bar. You could tell was like
Yeah.
appearing at the top of the screen.
Yeah, and then Agatha pops back in to like crack some jokes. She's like, "Oh, your ex and your boyfriend at the same party." I just think Catherine Hahn had so much fun in this role,
100.
and
Yeah.
She was running a drag bingo night with those puns and little
But, like-
quips from the sideline. Yeah.
But like honestly, that level of high intensity comedy is knowing this style. It's the actors that take themselves too seriously that never survive in the Marvel Universe TV
It's so
shows or film.
boring. The
Yeah.
villains
Yes.
who aren't having some fun with it.
Right.
well, and I think that like realistically, I can't think of another villain that we got in the Marvel universe that was this much fun aside from Loki, and like
Hmm.
I don't, and I think that's like a thing that's missing, right? Like a lot, like Thanos. All right, I mean he's just like an all powerful
It wasn't
dude
fun
on a mission.
though, to watch.
Yeah, like
Killmonger was fun, but mean.
yeah,
But I mean,
Yeah.
this goes back to even like a Shakespearean principle. Like what they always tell actors, especially when you're doing Shakespeare, if you're going to play Iago, if you're going to play a villain, the
Yes.
villain never thinks they're a villain. The villain thinks they're the most interesting, good person in the room,
The victim in the story. The
right?
yes.
sister.
Hmm.
Not. I know we bring it back to Buffy a lot, but I will say that Claire Kramer, who played Glory, who was like one of my favorite Buffy villains, she kind of said the same thing about Glory when we interviewed her on the podcast. Like she was like, I mean, Glory just wanted to get home. Everyone was just in her way and annoyed her, but like she just wanted to get home.
Yeah.
She was like, a hell god who wanted to get back to her dimension. And I like that even Claire as an actor felt that way about Glory. And like Glory definitely felt her like that way about herself. And I do think you're right that those are the best kind of villains, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, like Agatha owes a ton to Glory. Like, I mean, a lot. It had a similar vibe, like especially even with like the hitting her with the car, hitting with the truck. Like, I mean, just these, just that really, and then kind of getting up and like dusting yourself off and saying a quip again. Like this was it was a ton of fun to watch, and yeah, I mean, normally Marvel villains are like either these kind of like big showboats or they're like dusty old man in a suit wants to control everybody. Which we got both of in WandaVision.
We did. So I want to talk about the Pietro stuff. So then we cut to Monica being stuck in Pietro's room. This was one of my big letdowns for the finale. Is that we spent so much time with Monica, Wu, and Darcy, and we spent especially Monica developing her character and her powers. This felt like right? Like it felt
really
like
mediocre.
Yeah.
But I always feel for the creators in the weird way because, and so part of me is like, but Wanda and Vision are the two, they were such side characters until they became this enormous love story. So part of me is like, well, they have a track record of introducing kind of not in the strongest way, but then building a character. So I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt.
That's fair.
I think Monica and actually probably Wiccan are going to have their like day in court very, very soon in some of these movies. So I think they did set them all up kind of very well. But in general, like, yeah, we're seeing Monica in episode 7, like fucking walk her way through this barrier and having that huge moment, and then just like maroon her in this house, and like that was definitely like, oh god, I wish we could have spent 10 more minutes on the runtime and had a little bit more for her going on. Yeah,
for both.
Yeah. Well, I will also say about the Pietro of it all, like, so my roommate actually does know the Marvel Universe really well, and, he was explaining the Scarlet Witch lore to me and all of that, but when Evan Peters showed up as Pietro, my roommate got very excited early on in the season, like, oh, this is definitely Marvel opening up a multiverse theory, this is going to bring a whole new world, because, with Evan Peters having appeared in the X-Men films.
Right.
And from what I understand, the way that they handled Pietro at the end with this reveal and, with Agatha having been controlling him, does that not completely debunk the whole multiverse theory?
It does.
It
Yeah.
does.
I mean, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it was like it had very big Iron Man 3 vibes, right?
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Where,
Yes.
where it was just this red herring and then a headshot. But I think the problem is, like, we already know they are doing a multiverse. Like, Disney and Marvel have confirmed that. Like, and that before WandaVision debuted, they said WandaVision was tying directly into that. And there's like 3 projects that are centered on this multiverse, and it's WandaVision, and then the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and then the new Spider-Man movie, right? And they there's been all these rumors or maybe confirmations about actors from the old Spider-Man movies coming back to this one,
Right.
blah 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 blah.
It's something what they did with Mysterio, and then with this, which is they seem to be like way too cautiously entering it. Like, they're clearly going to do the multiverse, but they keep cluing us into, yes, the multiverse is coming, but they keep like pulling back and not doing it. Like, they were like,
Yeah.
Mysterio was like, I'm from a different universe code, but then he was a fraud. And then this is like, oh, it's like, oh my God, they're pulling him from another thing, but like, oh, but not really. Like, they seem to not be willing to like really 100% do it until they're doing it.
Right. Just a tease.
Well, and that brings me, Monica, I'm going to ask you a question because you've written for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Uh-huh.
Is a lot of that, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think, did that sometimes, right? Where it'd be like, ooh, maybe like they had Ruth Negga and they were like, oh, she might be a telepath. And then it was like, oh, no, she's not.
Right.
Like, a lot of that is kind of like Marvel's control, right?
Yes.
Like they don't want the people to go there yet, right?
Yes. So it's like they have a comic book universe and they're trying to allocate, well, we're saving this character for this 5 years down the line. So yeah. So you're sort of adjusting as you go along, which is every TV show. I mean, it's not just limited to the Marvel universe. You're sort of playing with the hand you're dealt, and then you get new cards. And my metaphor is just weak there, but
I think like definitely there seems to be something where they're building everything very carefully. And what I like is that, as slow and sometimes like way too slow as it could be, I feel like these movies are sort of built with a little more longevity maybe than something that's really directly immediately responding to fan theorydom.
Yes.
Where like they're not making these shows to keep up with the very fast brains of mega fans who are like, yes, that's the multiverse, and they're going to go here, and Mephisto's behind it, and this is gonna, like, they're doing this very one stone at a time.
Right, and I think they're trying to come up with an organic story that ties everything together in a way that, like, I do wonder if they ignore fan theories just to not have those voices in their head. I always wonder about that.
I think that feels correct, because like I think like that can lead, because then again it can be short-sighted, because then it's like, well, then you don't have something like WandaVision, which really captured a lot of people who were only partially into the MCU or were into the MCU and then fell off. I know a lot of people who, when like the show began, were like, I'm really burned out on MCU, I can't do it, can't go there. And then 6 weeks later they were like, oh, I'm binging everything, thanks.
Well, it's a revitalization of the genre. I mean, I think that's super necessary. I genuinely wonder though, like, with what I can, again, I've been saying this to like friends outside of interviews and shit, like the genius of like a genre bending show like WandaVision. I genuinely wonder how much thought went into recapturing audiences as opposed to it's just a happy accident. I always wonder that with a good TV show like this.
I think so too, because the thing is, everyone's trying to make a hit show, and some people go by weird numbers or projections of what's popular and not. And then there are other people who have a story to tell, and then people find that story. Like Breaking Bad broke a lot of rules, and people loved it. And I think WandaVision is also taking that creative gambit, which is so nice to see.
Much agreed.
I think that's kind of baked into the history of the MCU, like almost like as a foundational part of the business, though. Like it is as formulaic. We're like 13 years into this thing at this point,
Yeah.
and so like as much as it seems like it's very protected and very structured and very a formula they follow. I think we kind of forget how incredibly risky some things were at the time. Like
100. I mean, Black Panther was a risk.
Right.
yeah,
And they were hopeful, but just visually, it was a risk for everyone. And wonderful, because sometimes I think what they're learning is you have creatives who know how to tell the visual medium or the television medium, but still use the Marvel sort of playground, but tell a story. Because WandaVision is very much a TV show about TV shows, which is fascinating. So it has a structure that's not like anything else in the MCU because it's about TV itself.
Yeah, I wonder what it's going to feel like watching Winter Soldier. That's probably not going to be super in conversation with the medium of TV. Like really just being like, oh, this is going to be a movie that we're going to like break it apart into 6 pieces. Like I wonder if it's going to be that.
I think they said that though. I think they kind of specifically said that they wrote, shot, and filmed it as a film, like as a feature film, and then just like cut it into an episodic thing.
Yeah,
and they're doing that with a lot of that slate of 80 TV shows. Like they put forth WandaVision as an example of the new kind of limited series that they as Disney Plus are hoping to almost coin, if you will, like a way for audiences to binge, enjoy, get excited about, then move on.
Right.
It's to me it's so interesting because I think the whole like MCU experiment is such a like modernized, like updated version of like old school serial movies.
Yeah.
And this is like just reinventing that format a second time, and I love this idea that they took something from like 60 70 years ago, blew the dust off it, said we can do this again, pretty much at a time when everyone thought that movie theaters were going extinct.
Right.
They succeeded at it, and then they have moved into this new thing, and they're like, we're going to just do a new version of this again for your home living room. To me, that's just really a kind of an interesting, like it's a creative endeavor and like a type of art almost unto itself, just the way it's formatted.
Yeah. I mean, I love a limited series. Like this is something where I was so happy knowing that there's really not going to be a WandaVision season 2. Like that we're not going to have to be all put through like a second season that's trying to recapture the thing and maybe leaning too hard into the wrong thing. Like I feel like this is just so great that it's a one and done, and then we'll see these characters live in other ways. But I love that they're one-offs.
Agreed.
Yeah, I do think it benefited from that because we knew that even though there were a few things like like Monica and the kids and stuff, but like for this show, this was the end. And like you said, Adam, of course these characters will pop up again for other things, but I kind of think it's almost like it's very comic booky to me that like I mean I said this before about Darcy. Like I like the idea of Darcy being like kind of the go-to scientist in the MCU that's like a human ally to these superpowered folks. And like she helps in the ways she can, and I like her being able to breeze in and out of things. And having it be like, oh yeah, Darcy's in this limited run comic book. That's what that feels like to me. I like that kind of shit.
Like even with Jimmy Woo too. Like I mean, none of us were expecting like the fave from Ant-Man to like show up in this show. Like I mean, it was nice. It was fun.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
I mean, he delivered though.
Oh my
he
gosh,
stole the spotlight so much.
Yes,
he understood the style. He understood it
and the comedy.
Yes. Yeah, all of them really did, and I think all of them, like Monica was more like the quote unquote straight the straight player there in that trio, and Darcy was like the helpful scientist who's going to do exposition, and Jimmy Woo is like the nice supportive guy that's there to help.
That trio was like the people's couch. Like they were like this Greek chorus. It was brilliant that they had these funny people taking the piss out of stuff when it got too heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's the kind of shit I love in genre. I mean, I think maybe that's a reason I was just a little disappointed in this finale because the three of them became my favorites.
Yeah.
And then they kind of didn't do much here. But again, Monica, you are right. It's like it was Wanda and Vision's show, not.
No, I just have hope that they're setting something up.
Yeah.
I mean, to that end, like we know when we're seeing Monica again, and like we're seeing Monica again before we're seeing Wanda again. You know, like we're seeing Monica. It sounds like a couple of times before we're gonna see probably a lot of the rest of these characters. So
Yeah.
I think in a very real way they were like she's gonna get a lot of story and a lot of screen time very soon. So you know, let's.
And here's the thing: I do think there was a little bit of a letdown with that character. I mean, I thought her big heroic moment was undercut. And I was, I wished it had been a little bigger, but at the same time, I was weeping by the end. So it always comes down to that for me. I'm like, I was sobbing in the end. So
Yeah,
So it must be good.
Yes.
Yeah, Monica kept getting like Susan Lucci'd a little bit because every time she had a great moment, it was someone else's much bigger. Like her big giant moment in any other episode would have been the thing we were all talking about, but it happened in the Agatha All Along episode. So like that's all anybody was talking about. And then this being the finale, you know, like so I feel like that there was a real fighting for like conversation domination.
But I mean, that's where we got those not one but two post-credit scenes that everybody, was dying over. End of episode and then post-credits.
I love that it felt like they were winking a little bit with Monica's mid-credit sequence because I don't know, because I feel like isn't the next time we're seeing her going to be like in Captain Marvel 2? So it was a little like, oh, Monica, people want to see you in the movie theater, and I was like, we sure do, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, which one comes out first, Secret Invasion or Captain Marvel 2? Because I think she's in both of them.
She'll probably be in, but it possibly Secret Invasion. That's the thing. I think these TV shows kept getting bumped around, but I don't even think they're filming Secret Invasion.
Yeah, I don't sort of screwed up. I think schedule-wise because of
Regardless, she's gonna meet Hulkling in Secret Invasion, and then she's gonna be like, and she's gonna like connect them with Wiccan later. I feel like she'll end up setting them up years in the future.
In the comics, Jessica Jones is kind of the one that's there that like helps the Young Avengers. She's kind of like the like adult ally there to like help these superpowered kids. And I kind of, while I love Jessica Jones, I wouldn't be mad if Monica ended up being the one put in that place that like helps these superpowered kids, since she's the one that like she's the first superhero that like met Wiccan and Speed.
Yeah.
I kind of would like her in that role because she already has a bond with these kids, you know?
I love the bond she had with those kids.
Yeah.
Even just in like, I mean, not only just like kind of delivering them, but in the sequence with the military, but we're skipping ahead a little bit. But yeah, because like that was probably one of my favorite sequences was them all taking on the sword folks.
But you're right, Adam. We are skipping ahead. So we go back to Wanda and Agnes. Wu does the whole, am I bluffing? Because my friends at Quantico are coming. And then we learn he is bluffing. But he does call them, which I do like that he like reversed his bluff because it's like, oh, but he did get a chance to call them. Then we cut to Agatha and Wanda in the town square, which Tom Lank mentioned that's just the Paramount Studio lot. And that's all I think of when I see them in that town square, that like, oh, that's just like the Paramount lot.
Yeah, living in LA ruins you for
movies. Yeah.
Correct.
Like
you're just like, oh God, what a cold late night this must have been to shoot this. Horrible.
Yep.
So we learned that it is the Darkhold, which it was first introduced on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and was in The Runaways, which I do like. I don't know that they'll ever connect it to either of those shows, but it's a nice little, oh, cool, this was first shown in those shows. Kind of like, and so Monica, I said this on a previous episode, and someone thought I was insulting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I really love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I said that I don't think Marvel acknowledges like any of those shows. And not because they're bad, but because Marvel just like doesn't want to acknowledge a lot of those shows.
when I worked on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it was like the TV and the film people. And even though it was one universe, the film people were the film people, and we were the little TV people. And then now it's all one. So
Right.
I feel like just even structurally, the new batch of television shows will have more continuity just because you're not following, like you're not seeing a late draft of the script as you're writing the TV show, hoping to intersect the two.
God, that must have been so fun for you.
What was really fun is Winter Soldier, when we saw the early cut, and it's like, oh, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Nazi? Okay.
Oh, well.
All right, well, that's cool. That's cool. Let's revisit where we're going. Yeah.
I like how politely you say that. We're just going to revisit. That's
My
all.
favorite thing about TV writing, and it's so true, it's a Project Runway challenge every friggin' day. So, like, the idea that you just make something up with no parameters, no one does that. You're just like trying to thread this needle with whatever, the studio and the network and everyone wants. And you put your creativity through that needle, but like every show has its weird parameters, and Marvel was its own brand of.
Monica, I'm impressed with the politeness with your speaking.
The political correctness of it all.
I am a words. No, the
Careful.
first thing,
Careful,
I'm just going to shut up because.
I was catching up with an old friend yesterday who is I won't say any details because she was having a panic attack on the phone, thinking that I was going to be saying something to someone. But like she's in one of these similar writers' rooms and was literally like, I can't say anything. I can't talk to you about it. Twitter people, they'll see inside your brain somehow. Like she was really panicking at how much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. And then I have the mean thing of sometimes I want to say bad things, but I try and drop clues. Like it's like, ask me some questions.
Because if somebody else asked the question,
I
didn't
that
technically.
person's awful. I feel like it's rude to just mention it out of nowhere. So,
so we get the like reveal that it's the Darkhold. Where are we? Monica. Oh, we go back to Monica because Agatha just like disappears again.
Right.
We go back to Monica. Monica gets the reveal. Ugh. So this is like another thing where I'm like, that felt stupid.
Very it's stupid.
It felt stupider than that character was in previous episodes.
Yes, right.
Like it felt like he got nerdier as the series progressed. Like the boner joke was beneath him, I thought.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before he seemed like more like a cool scumbag Uncle Pietro was like a dude I'm trying to hook up with. This guy.
Sure. that might be a sexual psychology thing, but I'm still here for that statement in general.
No, this one was definitely more like your boyfriend in college's scumbag roommate.
Polyshore-ish.
Yeah.
I think there was kind of some real world honesty to that though, right? Because like, isn't that just kind of like what that person actually is in like the cold light of day? Like in the bar, he with 4 drinks in you, like he was really witty and he seemed kind of cool and had a little edge.
Uncle, he seems
that's bleak. That is a bleak comparison.
But Alex,
not untrue.
Yeah, that's my life in New York when I lived there.
I was just gonna say, I was like, it might be true, but I want to escape from that.
Yes.
Well, moreover, though, I actually found it just cinematically shot for shot unsatisfying. The way that we're used to in Marvel having especially superpower or super ability reveals with, in this case, the beads of the necklace and the glowing eyes. We're used to that having like a real dramatic punch with an edit. And it all just kind of happened in front of us on a lukewarm pan and nothing even really sizzled. And then we moved on.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way to have made the necklace reveal.
I felt like, so my brain kept thinking like the way I would have done this scene is like, it just felt too subdued in general. Like I felt like we should have. They didn't. I know that they were probably trying to save a big power reveal for her saving the kids, but like I don't know. It still seemed like a dude she could kick his ass, even if she's not using her energy blast, and she did. So I just felt like, all right, just like beat this guy up. Like I felt like they should have been fighting. Like Monica seemed too like tough to just be like, all right, this like nerdo twink is like holding me in his room. I guess I gotta sit here. You know, like I felt like
That was the thing. She walked through the barrier, fought her way through,
Yeah.
and you know, this guy's like flicking her across the room. Yeah.
I'll take an unpopular opinion here and say that I kind of like how breadcrumbed and like her power reveal was and how subdued it was. Because I think that, I don't know, there is something that feels kind of honest about the idea of like that first time she hits the ground a couple episodes ago, and it's just, and then going through the barrier, and then finally at the end with the kids. I feel like it's kind of like, you know, you're finding out you have powers, and we're used to these big montages that like, you know, it's Tobey Maguire all together
Taking
swinging
the
through New
glasses
York
off,
or something. Yeah, this is more just, I feel like this is more like she totally could have taken Boner like one-on-one, but like she also maybe doesn't 100% know that about herself yet.
true.
Right, or she thought he had superpowers. Yeah. I just wish they had talked about something interesting even.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was the scene. It was the scene that bothered me. I want to almost redact what I've kind of, you know, complained about the powers wise. They've done such surprisingly good writing in WandaVision. So when something falls flat, I'm extra disappointed.
Misha, I think that's exactly it. It's like the writing was always so tight on 100% that even this, where it's of course not like the worst thing in the world, but this is just like not at 100, so it's like stands out a little bit more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think my big disappointment in that scene is solely just that Evan Peters is a throwaway character.
Yeah.
Because I like him so much as an actor in general.
Right.
It's like in everything he's in. And I'm actually really glad that they're not doing a whole multiverse thing where he is Pietro and they're like bringing the X-Men in, because that's like very convoluted, and those movies are of very mixed quality, to put it mildly.
Yes.
But he is just so good at everything he does. Like, you know what's not of mixed quality about those X-Men movies? Every scene that Evan Peters
100%.
like
It's true.
Right.
I think it's funny because like there is a reading of this Pietro scene and arc where it is basically like, here's what the MCU thinks of the Fox X-Men movies. You're boners, just some dumb, fall flat, nothing, missed opportunity, made physical. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It could be a little just be like, all right, here's what we think of your dozen movie run, a bunch of a big fart. Yeah, like.
So we go back to the town square. I really thought we were going to get something because Agatha does a little thing, and we get Emma Caulfield, Dottie, coming out of her like hole.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Monica, Alex, I know you're both huge Buffy fans as well. Were you both expecting a little bit more from Emma, or did you kind of like, for me, it felt like casting her had to be a choice, but then it really wasn't. It was just like, yeah, she's a good actor and she's going to play this like human in town.
This is super meta.
Okay.
But I liked her bitching about sort of being the meat puppet.
Okay.
And that idea of like, if you like this role, I'll do this. So like, and I enjoyed it on another level, I'll be honest. But it felt like it was talking to creators and writers sometimes, which amused me.
All right. Fair.
I will say that her performance of the complaining of the meat puppet of it all was actually the only in this episode performance of the humans coming out of their trances that actually satisfied me, because I don't think it served the story to have this ultimate mob of people just start begging not arbitrarily, but abstractly.
Yeah.
Whereas she and her writing was coming at it from this is really dangerous, and I know there's stakes, but let me try to please you because you're scaring me. There was more
and
development
I just
there.
see my kid, maybe my kid could become friends with your kids. So
Yes,
like, which I thought was a kind of, I like that story. But
Well, she's like, there is like something also I think meta about that idea that she's like desperately trying to pitch an idea and like, yeah, she's begging for a writing credit. Give me work, almost.
That hurt. That hurt.
Yes.
No.
Suddenly she's me.
Sorry
Jesus.
to writers on the cast.
Yes, please give me a role that isn't embarrassing.
Oh my God.
I wasn't to answer your question though. I wasn't expecting more screen time for Emma Caulfield, but it was like the Evan Peters thing for me, where it's like she's just such an amazing actress, and she's to see her so underutilized was a bummer. Like, give her a movie. Make her Emma Frost in the new X-Men movie. Like,
please.
Oh God,
like, she's so good. She's so good. And this is like not even just for Marvel, like all of Hollywood, any film production just should hire Emma Caulfield and have her be the central star of the thing.
Let's call her agent. Let's do it.
So yeah, I will say the Emma Caulfield's performance, I think, made the most sense because it was like, oh, she's just begging for a role. When everyone else kind of surrounds her, I'm like, they know she's controlling the whole town, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are they gonna do?
Yeah, Emma
like
made
maybe
sense,
just run.
but like Deborah Jo Rupp was more memeable with like all of
Yes.
her, like,
Just kill me.
to be dead. Like,
I did like the "Just Let Me Die."
I've seen that on Twitter like maybe 7,000 times already now in various different joke formats. It's great. But yeah, I think this is something where this is going kind of into an area where I do think that something that WandaVision is either accidentally or very much on purpose setting up, which is, I think this is the turning point where this universe stops being like, oh my God, Avengers have Iron Man to my birthday party, to we're introducing mutants and this is how society turns into the X-Men society. Like, it's going, like, I feel like I could see a future X-Men film where they bring in townspeople from Westview, where you see like Emma and Deborah Jo like on like testifying before Congress why they should pass the mutant registration to be like, I was kept in my home and she wouldn't let me see my daughter. Like, I feel like this and they would be legit. Like, it would be
100%.
it would create up legit stakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea, Adam. I think that could be a very smart way of like tying WandaVision into, other things that aren't just like Wanda related.
Because the show already sort of like started my thinking that way in like episode 4, or whenever Hayward was talking to Monica about like, oh, I see, you're always advocating for super powered individuals.
Yeah.
Like, there was a tinge of like, oh great, we're going there.
Yeah.
But that's also the success of the show, right? Like the fact that we are on this podcast having this conversation with relatively intelligent themes bouncing back and forth means that this show was pretty much inarguably successful.
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
I mean, wasn't it like the most trending show
Globally?
like world? Yeah, I think like worldwide. Yeah, I think it really was. But so Elizabeth Olsen, I have sang her praises consistently because Jesus Christ, even in this scene when she's accidentally strangling everyone, her emotions are so good because she's scared because she didn't want to hurt these people. And like, I think that also, like, Adam, what you're saying is how it could tie into the X-Men. Like, a lot of the X-Men plots were Professor Xavier saving these kids, right? These like kids who don't know how to use their powers, and maybe something bad did happen. Maybe someone did die, but it wasn't ever intentional. It's like, the powers exploded and then accidentally like a mom got her arm chopped off.
Well, this is like Rogue. This is how like this was like, oh, she kind of like, put people in comas like by touching them. Like, it was like these things that are like very unanticipated like that. And yeah, I mean, every future X-Men actor should be taking notes from Elizabeth Olsen, because both emotions she went through in this were a roller coaster.
They're brilliant. I mean, both Elizabeth Olsen and Katherine Hahn are a wonderful example on the drama and comedy side of things, how the power of play pretend must be really strong as an actor in these films. You know that I had this thought when I was watching the Katherine Hahn fight scene in this one, the epic one at the end. Like,
Mhm.
that is her on a platform, on a green screen,
Yes.
screaming at
Yes.
nothing.
Right.
And with Elizabeth Olsen, that's literally just a bunch of actors doing the Walking Dead bit of falling to the ground around her while she weeps. These are all
Yes.
this is
Mhm.
all play pretend, and so the power is really it really has to come from the actor. And I color me unwholly impressed by both of these women for that reason in this series.
And to
Yeah.
like be that's exactly right, Risha, 'cause, like, and to be like Catherine Hahn continuing to like because she started the episode at a 10 and then had to escalate to the ending. Like so that's the thing, like having this like performance and knowing how to like amp it up and like literally her like knowing that she's on top of this roof on the Paramount lot next to like a soap ad being like, it's called the Book of the Damned. Like she committed to like every
Yes.
beat of this. Like, and it felt very believable. Like if anybody else had been handed a script like that, the script was bad, but just like it's a lot of big
That.
goofy stuff in a row.
Yeah.
It's literally the nature of belief, belief, belief. I believe I am a superhero, therefore I am in these films.
Yes.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Olsen, like she does a very good, like confused and upset look. And even I like felt emotional for her because I kept relating it back to X-Men where it's like, oh, like she really didn't mean to like put those weird chokehold lassos around
Right.
everyone's neck. And she is upset that it happened, right? Like the way she's like panicking and whispering, like, I'm sorry, like was so good. Like a thing this show consistently did was hit those emotional beats that it wanted to hit and
Yeah.
needed to hit with like 100% accuracy.
Yeah, it was gay rights with her because she really was like, because she would go into these things where she convinced you that she was all of these emotions at once because she could very easily go from like scared, da da da, to haha, just kidding. I'm like really vibing on how powerful I am right now. Like later in the thing, like how quickly she oscillated. And that makes Wanda such an unpredictable character and more
Yes.
fascinating because we don't
Mhm.
know going into Doctor Strange 2, is she going to be a villain, an anti-hero, the hero, the lead, the whatever? Like we don't know what tone she's going to take because we know she's sorry this happened to Westview, but she probably is not going to be stopping messing with reality.
Right. Well, and so speaking of emotional beats, so she gets upset. She opens the hex a little bit, tells everyone to run, which we later learn no one got out of there. I mean, Emma Caulfield's character even said, I had a child at home. So,
She
like,
really needed to.
she's like, I can't run. I got, like, kids locked in the house like you did.
Yeah, how could she make it back in time? Like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, if Emma Caulfield was dipped into like her Anya thing at a certain point, Anya would have reacted like, well, as I just said, I need you to let my daughter out first, and like,
I've already made myself clear.
to repeat,
Yeah.
help.
Just to circle back to what I said earlier, Wanda.
Circling back. Oh, that would have been a circling back email. Yeah. It's like, well, no, that was definitely. I feel like, yeah, that was definitely like the vibe of like when you ask someone 2 questions in an email and they only respond to one and they say have a great weekend. You're like, well, there was a second question in there.
God, that
But
hurt me in my soul.
That's every email I send out for this fucking podcast. But so she does open it a little bit, and then we immediately find out that it's making Vision and Billy and Tommy all like literally fall to pieces. And this this part, like this is when I teared up. I was like, oh shit. That's when I was like, this is what's gonna have to happen at the end. Like that kind of like,
I,
Set it up.
right?
I,
That was when it's like, oh, so you ruined this world. The family goes. That's
Yep.
heartbreaking.
I feel, yeah, it was literally like the pitch room where someone was saying like, well, what are the stakes of this? Well, it gets pretty clear like she has to like keep holding everyone hostage or let her family disintegrate
Right.
into non-existence.
Yeah, and that part hit me just because I was like, well, now I know how this is going to end. I'm not going to be happy about it. And I thought like the acting there, like, ugh, poor fucking Wanda, Jesus. But I do love that once she gets them back together, this was like one of my favorite parts. The idea of like the family being like, all right, now we're all gonna fight. Like we all have powers, we all know we have powers, we are good to fight. And that's the shit I love. You know, Vision goes off to fight the white zombie Vision.
Yeah.
Wanda says to the kids, boys, handle the military. Mommy will be
Favorite
right back.
line.
It's the Spy
whole
Kids
piece.
moment. The actual Spy Kids moment.
Yes.
I was feeling Incredibles, but yes.
Yes.
That is a wonderful comparison as well. I acknowledge.
I'm just very glad we could come to that agreement. Yeah. You're both correct. Yes.
That normally doesn't happen with two queers. I'm
I was gonna
impressed.
say, I was like, what is this agreement? Yeah.
I was going to say, this is very strange. Amicability, is that a word? I don't know. Move on, please.
Here we go. Right. We're syncing up.
That for me, I love that shit. And I love that. I mean, she was right. The kids did have the power and they handled literally all those guards very easily.
It's funny that like it's weird that the next show is gonna be all military.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh man, this entire Falcon and Winter Soldier, this 10-year-old Billy could just like handle all of them. Like,
But so we get Vision is in the library fighting the white zombie Vision. And Vision, a thing that white zombie robot Vision is like, his thing is that Vision and Wanda need to be like exterminated or whatever. What was like, so Hayward's plan was to build Vision. Hayward never really cared that much about Wanda, aside from getting like a dose of her power. I don't really know. My confusion is like, what was the end game here? He sends him in. Did he just want Vision to kill them both, and then he would have been fine?
Because basically, creating White Vision is illegal. It's against the Sokovia Accords. It's against Vision's living will. So he knew he would not be able to bring his Vision online and like legally get away with it unless he could frame it in a way that was like, oh yeah, Wanda brought him back to life and then she died and we got rid of her. But like, here we go. We've got a Vision, we should use him.
Interesting. That is very well maybe correct, because these thinner spiderwebby storylines I actually don't follow as well. But like, I thought it was he could justify bringing the White Vision online in order to neutralize the threat of not only Wanda but this Vision inside of the world, the original Vision that was created for this TV show.
Right.
I thought that he could justify having built the weapon because, look, I just saved you all, so don't you feel silly for telling me not to build it.
No, he was fully going to be like, oh, she brought this one online. Like, it's like, because there was no like proof of that. Like, yeah, I mean, yours is like basically it. Like, it's basically that with like that little added, like, he was going to like fully pretend they didn't build this thing at all.
Yeah, he like in that like thing that all villains do, where they go through like they do like an exposition of their master plan to one of the heroes. He like did that to Jimmy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I thought it was incredibly and wonderfully Hollywood meta that literally when he gets like slammed by the truck, she just says, have fun in prison, straight white cis evil man.
I mean,
wait, we did a live stream last night with other folks talking about the finale, and Adam, you said the exact same thing on our live stream.
Because that's the thing, is I was like, I'm really loving this fantasy narrative of like the second we expose someone in power, they just get carted off in zip ties. Like
it's superhero cancel culture. It's literally superpowered cancel culture.
It really, I was like, as if this wasn't real life, like we wouldn't all be put through like 10 different news cycles of why Hayward was like, he wouldn't even be in custody. We'd just be put through like so many different news cycles before it was finally just like, all right, he's just gonna retire somewhere to like
it's like, all right, Twitter ban him, all right.
I want to see like Falcon and Winter Soldier open up with like a segment of Tucker Carlson defending Hayward's actions and why it was justified.
Honestly, clocking it here and now, if there isn't a kind of fake /faux super conservative, evil news station in a future Marvel film, either TV show or film in the near future, I would be very surprised.
Well, they
Wait,
started going there with
They already kind of did that.
Did they?
Yeah, in Spider-Man, like they
Yeah.
like Alex Jones'd out J. Jonah Jameson.
which was so
Yeah.
upsetting to see that he was like this red-faced, like hawking his like products and being like just the shouty guy. But it made sense, but definitely.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think, Misha, I love that you just predicted something without having seen it. But yeah, I think that'll be really cool moving forward because, like, they could have like you said, Alex. If we don't see Sean Hannity, but they could have J. Jonah Jameson being like the fill-in and him like shouting about like, oh, that poor Hayward is misunderstood, and like that would track, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because
Mhm.
like conservatives are currently trying to rewrite reality without the benefit of like if our world knew there was a multiverse, how much would people be able to just be like, that was the multiverse version, and that was not even like a version.
Yeah, that wasn't
No, baby, you don't
Oh,
understand. That was
yeah,
not-
but
that
honestly,
that was a multiverse.
if I could blame the multiverse every time I fucked up, honestly, probably would do it.
But so yeah, so Hayward goes to shoot the kids, which is very weird, and seems
Why
more
did he do that?
unhinged. And then Monica comes in and saves them, and I really liked the moment. Again, I know I already talked about it, but I like this, like these queer children, and like Monica being like a nice like second mom with these queer children,
Yeah.
and I like that she turns to Billy and she's like, I like your tricks, and he's like, I like yours too. Like I was like, oh, I love this.
He's already obsessed.
It's very
with her.
wholesome. It's wholesome superhero content.
I wish it didn't feel like Monica didn't need to jump in front of bullets because he handled
Yes.
it. Like I wish it had been something else. So it wasn't like,
Mhm.
oh, you could have just stayed.
Right, like they would have been fine.
Disappointment.
I think I just love the idea of like, I think of like me as a baby gay, because like we know Wiccan will be a gay superhero. I'm just like, oh, I would have loved like having this like strong woman who's a superpower to be like, like another kind of like mom or aunt to me. Like
Just to say you were
that
cool.
bond,
Yeah.
that bond like makes sense to me.
Because that's my thing with Billy's powers is that like Wanda is like support. Like I think Monica was the first person to be like, hey, your stuff is cool because like his brother has like the really super cool visual power, but he's just like troubled by voices in his head. Like that
Oh my
Wanda
goodness.
is like either too busy or too like under a kind of like fog of depression to like help him understand. Like in episode 7, he's like really like legit like there's voices in my head. I don't know what's going on, what's happening, and she like kind of in the sitcom moment like doesn't answer, and then
Not all parents are perfect parents.
that's the thing. I was like, wow, this is gonna be a real great like future mom of a gay son moment where he's just like, you really could have explained like 17 of these things to me at a much earlier time, and I was alone with these feelings. Thank you. Yeah. But I think, and in general, and that's the other thing is like, she did not explain to them ever like, hey, you're going to disappear forever now.
No.
Yeah, like even but I'll save my thoughts when we get to that scene.
But so we do have Darcy coming in. She crashes the car. I like the scene, but I'm like, I keep thinking that Kat Dennings must have had like a heart out because she doesn't even get out of that truck. She delivers one line and is not in the show for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
I felt
She
And
might
that
have.
felt weird to me, right? Like Kat Dennings was a main character, and to only have one line and like not even interact with other characters.
Yeah, and she just disappeared at the end.
She had a heart out. She had an audition. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no,
they actually started filming Thor on the next lot over 10 minutes after she filmed that. So.
She did.
Or more realistically, she had another gig and she had to go sit in a hotel for 2 weeks.
That is more the gig. I would have liked, because that's the thing. Like, I think this is coming back to Ian's like forever point, which is getting Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy back together as like a kind of taking the piss out of the situation a little bit. I would have loved to have, because like Darcy's whole thing was she was like really explaining the hex and this and this and that from a metaphysics point of view, I would have loved to have seen the payoff of her going, "Oh, they're just like Salem witches. This is wild. This is nuts." Watching them fly around, and being like, "Well, I can't really explain this. I'm sure, yeah." Like,
you know what? That I would have loved that, right? Yeah, that would have been cool for her to be like, "Oh, well,
that would have been.
I guess all my science doesn't matter."
That's the thing. It would have,
Yeah, I
it would have been
didn't.
a killer moment. Yeah.
I didn't know I needed that, but now I feel
No,
like I've missed out on it. So I'm not sure that I love that you brought it up.
That's what we're doing here with these episodes. We're just thinking, we're just ruining it.
Welcome to
Ruining.
the podcast.
Professional
It
ruining.
excites me for the future possibilities, though. Like, the idea of, like, Darcy being in the next Ant-Man and, like, nerding out with Michael Douglas on science stuff sounds super cool to me.
Yeah.
I would watch that. That sounds infinitely watchable.
Right. Completely on the flip of that, this is such a tangent, I promise I'll make it quick, but, like, I recently started reading about witchcraft from a purely, like, historical, I'm fascinated standpoint. And, like, some of the stuff that I'm reading is very academic, but like in reading that stuff in tandem with watching WandaVision, I've just been like, wow, these writers must be having so much fun drawing from this endless well of lore that also intersects with the comic book world. I think it's fascinating.
I know. It must be fun to do the research.
Oh yeah.
And not have to rely on science as much.
Or the faux science. I mean, that must be exhausting to write Darcy's like faux science. I that must be inferior unless you're a science geek, which I'm not, but I will always research historical badass witches.
Geek. Because if you're a science geek, it doesn't make sense.
That's true.
On the shows where the science people are like, that can't happen, and it's like, but it's going to, so can you justify it?
It's happening.
And I don't think like it's not purely from like a all comics front, but like from an MCU front, have they really, because they've been historically like very nervous about getting into magic. This is like is this the first time where we're like, it's magic and there's not really a
Shield would had this line that was supposed to encompass the Marvel, which was, magic is just science we don't yet understand.
Right.
Yes.
So that's the sort of way they get around it. It's like, just because you don't get it doesn't necessarily mean there's no reason behind it.
And you know what, Monica? Not shitting you. In the most recent history book that I'm reading, they bring up the same kind of line. Like, the people that say that magic is just science we don't understand are people that don't fully and in their heart believe in witchcraft.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's like there's a line that Thor says in like the first of his movies that's, I forget if he says it to Darcy or he says it to the older Skarsgård or to Natalie Portman or one of them, where he says basically the same thing. But then, like, I feel like when they get to Doctor Strange, it's just like, it's magic. There's no explanation. Tilda Swinton can astral project.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me Tilda Swinton can do anything, and I will probably say yes, she can. So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I also don't need to understand how things happen. I'm not that kind of viewer. So if you just tell me this is what happens, I'm like, all right, moving on. Like, I don't need to understand the science behind it.
Yeah, I said this in episode 4, when we got all the reveal of like Darcy and Woo and Monica. Like, I didn't mind that Darcy only gave us 2 lines and was like, they're blah 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 waves, that's why this is happening, and like we moved on. That's fine for me. I don't need a long give me 2 lines of nonsense science, and I mean, as a kid, I love Star Trek.
You're making it up. It's not real.
Yeah,
so it will always be nonsense.
And that's the thing. I feel like this is ignoring that, like, we haven't all been digesting decades worth of media that's just like, this is how it is. It's magic. It's a never-ending story. It's this, it's that. You know, like, there's ways to kind of talk about all of that, but I am glad that they are kind of getting into something now where it seems like they're not really having to pin it on that. Like, hopefully, like, this is sort of a nice bellwether that, like, yeah, you can just fully say it's magic, and then kind of folks are on board.
Right. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Are we saying that the hex isn't real?
I know. I really was. I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were just like, "Gosh, I don't know if I feel like I wouldn't mind a hex. I feel like I wouldn't mind being like a citizen of the hex." for just a touch. Like, just
At this point, you're living in an apocalyptic future, so I think this is a strange time to evaluate any of this.
that's my thing. Yeah, I think I was just like, all right, well, maybe a little hex, maybe like a hex express, like just a little hex. Yeah,
Just a little one.
Hex.
We cut back to Vision's fight, and I have to say, I really like this like silly twist of like Hex Vision just explaining away to White Zombie Vision that like actually this is why I'm not the real Vision. What is it
Right.
like the what I'm gonna
Ship of
massacre it.
Theseus.
Something
Yeah.
Ship of Theseus. Yes.
But also like that acting. Remember, it was like, I require elaboration.
I
was
like
oh,
that.
yeah, that was
Mm.
so good.
Like, look at you, Paul Bettany.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like his character assignment was like play it blank, and he still was fascinating.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right?
absolutely.
The robot acting was incredible. Like,
and romantic robot, which is it's hard.
It's fascinating watching everyone get really smoothed by both of these visions. It's very nice.
I know.
me included. Watching it, I was very smoothed by both of them.
I was like,
so.
Okay. I think it's the confident calm.
Yes.
Like.
Yes.
I mean, it's also the unholy power. That's pretty hot too.
This is
But
true.
like, yes, confident calm.
The willingness to listen. He knows everything, but he's not about to, like, he's willing to listen to you.
Misha, I thought you were going to say the unholy padding of his costume because those padded pecs and shoulders did it for me.
Well, fair enough. I would like to believe they're not terribly padded, so I don't know what you're talking about, but sure, yeah.
It's real.
It's all him.
It's all real.
So then we get confident Wanda. Then we start like Wanda almost takes like a turn. And it's kind of like when, she goes up to fly there, she's like gonna get Agatha. And I like this, like, and understandably she's been really fucking depressed through the series. So she wasn't as confident, but I like that she gets a little bit of confidence here. She goes to Agatha, we get the like callback to the way she used her powers in Age of Ultron.
All right.
And suddenly they're at her like coven trial. And I thought that was a really good, I don't know, everyone's doing good work here because I love that Agatha is pretending to be scared. Agatha's like, no, please. And then is like, fuck you. I don't care. This is fine. Like, you thought this was a traumatic moment for me, but actually I don't care. Like, I love that.
Yes.
And even in the first time we saw the coven, like either an episode or 2 episodes ago, with it was Agatha all along. I think it was an episode after that, actually. But that is Catherine Hahn's power in a nutshell. Like, please don't hurt me. I'm a scared woman. Actually, I'm a badass bitch. I'm going to eat all of you. Like, it was great.
So then Agatha has the witches kind of attack Wanda, and I really liked this like image of these like skeletal zombie witches like accusing Wanda, like being like, you're a witch. It was very like Crucible, but actually the witches are accusing her. So
it just felt so great. Like, and this is where like entry into this part, like through the finale, like there was such a palpable sense of like specifically 80s fantasy movies where it was just like scary as hell. And I think when you get into this like sort of like zombies and magic and this big frightening red sky, like I just think visually from a design standpoint, this was just absolutely flawless. So I think in the end, like for the quibbles, this was just such a masterpiece of like performances and design and this and that. Like, so I think like I'm going to be gushing from here on to the end.
Noted. Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, don't correct me if I'm
wrong. So we cut out of that. We get a little bit more of like back and forth, and I love that. I mean, Adam, you said this, that it was a very Buffy moment, and I agree. Like her being like, oh, actually, I got the runes and I got the idea from.
Thanks for giving me the idea.
Yes, she literally says, thanks for the lesson. It's so good. And that's the kind of shit I love. I love a hero that's like been beaten down, but then like picks up their confidence and is giving you the middle finger.
And that she learned something all like that she was paying attention in the plot. Like that she was learning about herself in that plot. So I love the rune moment.
It was like so. It's like it really was funny that like I was so distracted with everything else that it still surprised me in that moment, even though they spent like 700 years bringing it up in the previously on. Like I was like, why are we doing this entire scene in the previously on, and then everything else gets like a second?
But now you know.
But now I know. Yeah, exactly. And I was. They got Miguel. Like they completely fooled me. It was well done.
So then we get Wanda in her full Scarlet Witch outfit. She's like, I don't need you to tell me who I am. The confidence really made me, literally my notes say, this confident Wanda is making me feel good about myself.
Oh, yeah.
And so she gets her new look. I want to know, what did everyone think of her new look?
I think we can tell what you think of her new look.
I will say that I had a similar reaction to Catherine Hahn's eyebrows. Like I said before, if being a superhero means that I get a skin-tight bodysuit and become really hot, sign me up.
I loved the because I think we only saw like the outfit and sort of like these little snippets and pieces and I know there was like a lot of lighting effects that sort of obscured some of the detail, but I think like the neck piece for me was the biggest hit. Like this sort of like leathery sort of cage neck piece all the way up to this like choker was very, very 90s, very good.
I loved it. And yeah, I think leaning into that kind of idea that like there was just a 90s vibe to it is absolutely, I mean, it's just kind of like reeks of that, but in a very updated way. And I think that's an interesting play off of the fact that it did this whole decade by decade period piece in the lead up through the story, that you did have things like it was mentioned earlier, it was like kind of an 80s fantasy aesthetic to the whole kind of scenery design. And then yeah, I mean, she looks like an extra from The Craft painted red. It was so cool and it was so spooky and it was just yeah,
it looked like it was giving me like Jennifer Lopez in The Cell.
Oh
yeah.
I have to be honest, and I'm gonna hold the minority opinion. I was so happy with like mom hoodie superhero. I was just like, yes, you're wearing sneakers, you're jumping, you got sweats on, you got depression, but you're still kicking ass. I love that. So, like, there was part of me that's like, why can't she be in comfortable clothes still? But I understand that there's a wish fulfillment, and maybe I'm too old. So, but I really did appreciate mom hoodie casual superhero girl.
Monica, I really like the idea of you being like, if this were you, you'd be like, oh, no, I don't need that new outfit. No, I'm good.
Like, why? I wear comfort. I have my leisure wear. I got my cute hoodie on, and I just don't need the, but mostly because I relate to Depression Wanda, and I'm like, let her wear her comfort clothes. Let her be comfortable. She's got some shit with.
I'm somebody who loves athleisure, don't get me wrong, but like, what if I will say it looked rather comfortable in its own way. Like it
didn't look like the worst. I'll agree with you. It was kind of it didn't over sexualize her. I appreciated that.
We didn't have a Wonder Woman moment, and that's what I did like about this.
Yes.
It makes me feel like I'm Wanda walking around my house in my depression athleisure.
Yeah.
And so I was like, great. I was like, great. I'm not in a bad place. I'm in a good place.
I honestly, same though, Adam. I will say, because I didn't love the costume that much, but again, the confident Wanda was making me feel good. So I was like, oh, she got dressed. I should get dressed today. Like that's
fair. Maybe I just want Wanda to wallow. Maybe I'm not accepting.
That should be the new Disney Plus little like caption when you start episode 9. It's like, Wanda finally gets dressed.
I know.
So should you.
She might shower in a day or two. She might actually do her hair.
Yeah.
The psychological impact of WandaVision. I love it.
literally right now I'm wearing a tank top and sweatpants, and I'm like, oh, should I have gotten dressed for recording? Like,
Well, nobody told me this wasn't a Zoom, so I did get dressed.
Misha, I have no doubt you look fantastic, though.
Well, thank you.
You've got your like
Appreciate
digitally
it.
appearing crown.
Oh, thank you so much.
So Wanda then she knocks Agatha down. Agatha. My notes, I'll have you all know, I go between calling her Agatha and Agnes so much that sometimes I typed Agana. Like I think because my brain was just like mashing up the two names. But so
It's
she
okay,
then
Agatha. It's fine.
she then kind of banishes her to being Agnes, which I will say I was very happy about.
I was too.
That was a cool moment.
And I think because Marvel also loves to like kill the villains, right? Like usually it's like the way we end the
Right.
story is the villain dies. And I was very happy that Agatha is able to be around because if they have Catherine Hahn and they can use her, she is so like dynamite in every scene that I love the idea of like, okay, we get like, say in Doctor Strange 2, like there's some magic they need help with. They go to fucking New Jersey and they're like, oh, we'll hit up, I'll take her back out from Agnes to Agatha and she can maybe help us because she can't really go anywhere anyway.
Well, what's great about that, and this is what my roommate brought up as well, my roommate was really excited about the introduction of Agatha when she reveals herself, because from what my roommate told me, from what I now understand about the comic book lore, Agatha is who technically taught the Scarlet Witch how to control chaos magic in the comic books. So
Yeah.
I think, and especially with the internet popularity of Catherine Hahn's character, I absolutely believe they'll bring her back. And I think it's really smart to have kept her in this little prison, because then they can harken back to the comic book lore of maybe, Elizabeth Olsen will need some help from another more experienced witch at some point.
Well, that's kind of what I was gonna jump into, is like the future for Agatha is very exciting, I think, because in the comics she's not like a straight villain. She's a hero sometimes, she's a villain sometimes, she's kind of just doing her own thing and thinks everyone's dumb. She's also like much older though in like appearance, but she's like more tied to the Fantastic Four actually than she was to Wanda in the comics, although she was close to Wanda too. And they've got this Fantastic Four movie coming out, and I think that would be such a neat kind of tie-in. Like, I'd love to see Catherine Hahn interacting with a whole different set of characters and being kind of mischievous, but maybe kind of also bailing them out when they're in over their head.
Yeah, I would love to see her have this similar, like, she deserves the Loki treatment, basically. Like, I would love to see her continue. I would love to see a multi-movie arc of them becoming friends, basically.
Yeah.
I would love to see, I think it could be, like, really funny when they do finally age Wiccan up, if he just, like, he starts digging her, even though, like, like, they could be, like, kind of working together, basically, and then kind of be like, hey, remember when you, like, dive into this magical dog leash? And they're like, and she's like, I know, it was crazy, early time in my life. Yeah.
So Agatha is banished to being Agnes. They go home, and Jesus Christ, like I don't think it was here. I think it might have been a little earlier when Vision says like, "We're gonna make it all right, but not for us."
Yeah.
And her face, the way she like bites her lip and is like, "No, not for us." That's for me when I started crying. I was like, "No." I couldn't believe we were going to have to watch Vision die again.
This time I really cared, though.
Right.
Yes,
this time I wept like it was a death, as opposed to just being like, oh, that sucks.
And definitely I was like, I feel like the show had been preparing me for Vision's death so well that I was handling that with more of a quiver lip, where I was like, full ass not okay was like the saying goodnight to the kids and knowing that went, and like seeing, like, again, not to keep bringing Buffy back, but like it was very like the end of season 5 with like seeing that red sort of energy kind of coming for them, and her knowing that like she has to do this horrible thing and walk out of the room. and having that just kind of moment of peace there really super broke me.
One of the things that really struck me with Vision re-dying, so to speak, I think is how it serves it, like as a two-part, the Infinity War death to this, how much I felt like that actually kind of mirrored real death and grief in a way that TV and film normally doesn't. Because I feel like a lot of TV and film deaths tend to, they go for the big kind of emotional
Yes.
overture, which is almost kind of like the grief processing, and they try to do that in the death scene. I wasn't so emotionally invested in Vision when he died in Infinity War, but the death itself was, it wasn't gory in a traditional sense, but it was kind of gory. It was very shocking
Yeah.
to watch
Yeah.
in the way it was done. And it was shocking. It was jarring. It kind of took you out of the rest of the film and what you were doing for a moment. And then WandaVision is the extended period later of kind of almost emotionally investing in that death. And so I thought there was something just really unique in the way that this was written and shot between the film and the show, and how much that really is like seeing someone die or getting a call that a loved one died, and the way that it is more just shocking and jarring than anything else up front, and then the emotion comes later. This is I think the only time I've ever seen it done that way in film, ever.
No, and it did this beautiful thing where they just looked at each other for the last minute just to take each other in before they died. They didn't kiss. And I was like so moved by that. It was just, well, I'm going to hold your look until your look isn't looking back at me anymore. And it was really subtle and oddly for a character who's died a few times.
Yeah.
That one, it got to me, and I agree. It felt different from other deaths.
Yeah.
And even so I would teared up at them going home, and then like when she tells the kids, "Thanks for choosing me to be your mom," like
Couldn't
literally
handle it. Yeah.
I wrote that in my notes and then wrote "oh no" in all caps. Like that hurt my feelings.
It was so sad. And
Yes.
I remember I read something on Twitter with someone saying they were upset that she didn't get punished at the end.
Yeah.
And I was like, except the worst punishment of all.
Yeah, her like entire family is gone.
I was like, I will forgive her anything in this moment.
Yeah.
Someone saying that on Twitter is such a horrible indictment of where we are as like a species and a culture. Like that's just like the worst manifestation of like a lack of humanity.
Well, it's just that weird thing where Wanda didn't intentionally mentally enslave a whole community.
Monica.
But I do.
Well,
I love that at the end, that she knew she had done wrong.
Yeah.
Like she accepted it. She felt shitty.
Yeah.
And believe it,
I was in grief. Sorry.
Yeah.
She's going to be on the run. She's gonna be like, there are ways to hold a character accountable, because I feel like sometimes people treat this a little bit like they do sometimes do a little like if this was like a real person, and it's like, well, no, in the sense of the story, it's like, where would she have gone? Would she have been held in some sword facility? She and we all know that it's corrupt, and they'll use her power now that they know that she's capable of doing all this. Like, it's not safe for her to go into some prison facility. She needs to abandon society, basically, go to this cabin and learn about everything. It's not going to do anyone any good to have her locked up somewhere under some.
It's a weird way to want to end it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because also, you can't put her in jail. Come on now.
I think that was almost, I think, one of the key themes that got wrapped up in the other show. We talked earlier about the kind of cancel culture, air quote, parallel with Hayward and Darcy like pinning him in the truck, but this is almost like the flip side of like exactly that sentiment on Twitter, that like kind of bad consequence focused carceral politic type of attitude that we see sometimes, which is like we need to punish, and that's punishment is what accountability is. And this, like, I felt very much told the opposite story, which is a very real and very true thing, which is about the way that trauma and grief inevitably, almost inevitably, makes people hurt others.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they often don't mean to or understand what they're doing.
I think
and
legit.
That's a really uncomfortable story to tell.
Yeah.
That's a really, really, really uncomfortable story for Disney financed superhero movies to tell, but if I texted someone who is the only Marvel thing they've ever seen is Black Panther, and I texted them about that part and like that idea, because it just felt so, after the last kind of couple of years, I think, of like where our country is, and like just all the really horrible stuff that like we've seen in our politics, and also in like I think there's been a lot of soul searching that people have had to do about themselves and the people in their lives, and in so many different ways. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people who have kind of those takes that are like, I really want to see this person get punished. Like, lock up Elizabeth Olsen. Let me see her. That same scene we saw in Civil War of her in the straitjacket, like tied to the bench. I want to see her that for the rest of eternity. And it's kind of like, no, like, I want to see her rehabilitate, and I want to see her find peace.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do think that idea of when you're in pain operating outward is really beautifully done. And I don't think it is a hard conversation to have, but it feels so true.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest that this whole conversation has made me realize that I don't necessarily believe my own point of this not being a messy ending of a show.
Yay, we convinced Misha. Yeah.
It's difficult to convince me of anything, so bravo, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, well said, everyone. It's because that's the thing, we have been like confronting a lot of ideas of like, what does it mean to rehabilitate someone?
What does it mean to make amends?
That's
And
the thing.
I've had this like long. There's so many there are a lot of people you want to make amends, and I think that there's something so powerful in that character saying, even if they knew what I went through, it wouldn't change their opinion of me, because of course not. They were the victims.
Yes.
There's no way they could. But it doesn't mean that the person, like, it just isn't, it was very nuanced.
Yes.
And I think it didn't diminish the story at all to make it so complicated.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of talked about the same point earlier, though, when it was being said that like this would be a great tie-in for X-Men to have like the residents of Westview out there saying we need to register these people and follow them around and snoop on them. Which is like, obviously that's a very harmful and prejudiced behavior. Like the whole point of X-Men is to comment on bigotry, right? But that's just another example of like the residents of Westview are not bad people. They were, victims of Wanda, whether accidentally or intentionally. And yet the trauma that they experienced in that moment still does not make them bad people, but it is going to possibly make them do something really bad to other people.
It's going to continue.
And to people they do not know.
Yes, it's going to perpetuate this cycle of punishment, and that's going to be, it's going to make for much richer storytelling more than anything else. I mean, that's my thing when people say these sorts of things like, oh, it should have been this way. And it's like, as if this was like a real life thing. It's like, well, what's the more interesting story?
Right.
What's the more interesting, thought-provoking understanding of things? And I think Wanda showed a lot of maturity, knowing that the best thing she could do for those people is get out of their lives immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think almost the counterpoint of that is that, like, you're saying like, it's better storytelling, but versus like what would happen in real life. But like, I think it's good storytelling because it good storytelling I feel like is always rooted in like parable. Like it's a reflection of real life, and I think maybe like what it should and could be, and also I think in that really ugly way of looking at ourselves and thinking, God, when my gran died, maybe I shouldn't have been such a jerk to Tim at work,
Yeah. I mean, the I, yes, I think about that all the time because I went through a lot of like grief and loss for like a few years, and like it ate a friend passed away, and it like ate up our friendship group, like that
Mm,
group of friends that friend
Mhm.
was like a part of. Like most of us aren't really friends anymore, right? And I think at the time it felt so shocking to me. I was like, how can these assholes not like they're not being my friend now? But then like looking back, it's like, oh, that makes sense because grief eats away at like everyone. Um, and I think that it's an important thing that I think everyone is right. Like Misha, I think you are right that it was messy, but I think it was messy on purpose because of the nuance of like we can't tie a bow on this, but we're going to show you that Wanda, truly didn't mean to hurt these people, and she is letting go of her entire family because she knows she has to right her
Right.
wrongs. But like, it still kind of sucks, right?
100%.
yeah. I mean, that's also the beauty of where Marvel is hopefully headed with stuff like this, which is, I think, part of the fatigue of 13 years, like it was brought up at the beginning of this, of like the Marvel universe, has been that at the end of the day, a lot of it is serving a very particular, rather large, but very particular fan base. So
Yeah,
the fact that they are so deeply invested in hiring the writers and telling the stories that can humanize these otherwise completely inhuman characters from like comic books of lore, like, then great, let's do it.
yeah, yeah. And I before we, I now I'm bringing us back, but I just gotta the line of we've said goodbye before, so it stands to reason, and her saying we'll say hello again, like
Uh,
that was the moment like I cried the most because that I thought those were like really good lines of dialogue, and
You were.
it's like it's very comic book-y, but it still landed. Like they did a good job of delivering these lines that are good, but still like it's silly to if you like think about it, it's like kind of silly. It's like, oh, they're like joking about the fact that he's dying for a third time, but like he is
mhm.
dying for a third time, and
Right. And it
right,
just felt so. Sometimes I think the hardest thing about writing characters like that is trying to find the human in the like completely insane scenario of
yeah,
my lover died 3 times and now I'm saying it goodbye again. But they managed to make it feel like that she was honestly saying goodbye.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the realistic knowledge that you don't know where it's going to pan out because you've already been through 3 different iterations of a life,
right,
which I thought was also kind of cool to make it very specific to their love story. We've
yes,
had
yes,
different versions of him being him.
That line just gutted me, and it also made me like immediately at episode close go like listen to "We'll Meet Again" by Vera Lynn on repeat because I feel like it's basically
Oh,
just the same thing.
well, so then we move on. Wanda, her whole house disappears. We're back to the plot of land that we learned that it actually was.
Mhm.
She goes back to the town square. Everyone is mean mugging her. Um, Emma Caulfield looks terrific.
Really
Um,
good.
she goes up, and I do like the conversation she has with Monica, where I kind of was like, is she not gonna like talk to Monica, the person she threatened every time she was trying to help her? But I was glad that they had a moment together because I feel like we needed that. And I also I was like already crying, but then I teared up even more when Monica was like, I would have done the same thing for my
I
mom,
love that.
you know?
yeah, that was good. That was well done.
Yeah. And like Tiana Paris is such a good actor, and her delivery of like, she's commiserating with Wanda, but also trying to like make like alleviate some of the like guilt Wanda
Yes.
feels. And I don't know, I really liked that like kind of like more toned down scene of them just and no one's crying, but we know there's emotions going
Yes.
on.
Hmm.
So that brings us to the end, I guess. Wanda leaves town. We get our two credit scenes of an agent tells Monica someone wants to see her in the theater, and then they're a scroll. She says, someone up in space wants to see you. We assume it's Nick Fury. As we saw at
Right.
the end of Spider-Man, he is in space with the Skrulls. And then we get our final credit scene of Wanda. So I didn't quite understand until Kirsten White texted me to be like, oh, I think, was it just like Wanda was doing like the appearance, like her with the like coffee was like people monitoring her in case, but then her on the inside was like what she was actually doing was like researching
Oh,
and
I
everything.
thought she was astral projecting and multitasking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had like also
she's gonna drink some tea and relax while the other part of her figures some stuff out. But
I personally like that theory. Even I don't rightfully know which one's true, but I would imagine if she was being monitored, then why would they go through the trouble of making it in her like this like virtual Hansel and Gretel witch house, like in the middle of nowhere?
Right.
True.
Because I got the sense she's keeping herself away from people until she figures out how to use her magic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was definitely, because this is similar, because this is like paying off a line that Agatha had, which was that the Scarlet Witch's power succeeds the Sorcerer Supreme's. This is something that we have seen Doctor Strange do. He was sleeping at the time, like his body was sleeping, and then his soul was doing all of this studying and research and whatnot. And this sort of winking to, ooh, she can still even be functioning. His body needed to sleep to have himself like do all this other stuff, and she can still go make some tea and enjoy that lake.
Pretty good.
The Airbnb looks amazing.
She just needs a little getaway. She hasn't gotten the vaccine yet, but she did need a little getaway. So
right.
So okay, well that brings us to the end. Favorite scene, Monica?
When they were walking into the house, onto the porch, and their clothing changes into the regular parent clothes, and it was a goodbye.
Misha?
I would say Agatha's return to Stepford wife realness was lovely.
Alex?
I am really torn on this.
All right.
Yeah, I don't have a solid answer. I don't want to just repeat Agatha returning to Stepford wifedom, but it's got to be kind of the winner, right?
Yeah. Although I love how
if nothing else, then
seriously you're
something
taking this.
I'll overthink pretty much anything you give me to overthink.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, I mean, you're allowed to have the same answer as people. I often have the same answer as other
I
folks.
am pretty cool. You are allowed to think like I think.
You know what? I can't ever make a decision to save my life, so can you just do it for me?
Absolutely.
Like,
we have 2 votes for Agatha.
I just imagine if Ian was like, "This is Slayerfest. No one repeats themselves on this show." It's not that kind of show where someone
rules are meant to be broken.
Overstates
people do, or they'll be like, "Oh, well, I can't say that to someone already." But I'm like, I don't care. Say whatever you want. But Adam, what was your favorite scene?
God, I'm torn between Boys Handle the Military, which I thought was just like a super fun scene to see them and Monica kind of just swat these silly characters I don't care about away. And then, but like I think the real winner for me has to be the runes reveal.
Okay, yeah, Adam, see, look now, Adam, you and I are twins because for my favorite scene, I have the family fighting together and the rune scene. They're my two favorite.
We're 2 different emotional tones about the same point.
Favorite outfit, Misha?
Oh, anytime I get to see the dark eyebrows and the full getup for Agatha and Agnes, I'm just a Catherine Hahn fan is what's really going on here. But yes, that.
Fair. Monica?
Not her mom depression hoodie, but her post my family's gone and I'm standing in the wreckage of was once my home hoodie.
Okay. I like you differentiating between hoodies.
Oh yeah, no. I say this wearing my depression pandemic hoodie. So there you go. I'm just merging out with her. I'm merging. I'm just like
Alex?
I'll be really basic and be the first person to say the Scarlet Witch costume reveal.
Great. Okay. Adam?
I also like the Scarlet Witch costume reveal.
All right, and mine, I'm with Misha. Agatha, I still love her witch look. Now, grade the episode. What grade do you give it, Alex?
An A with 3 plus signs written in chalk afterwards.
Yeah.
Adam?
An A, yeah.
Misha?
God, I started this episode as a B+. I'm upgrading it to a solid A, no pluses or minuses.
Oh my gosh.
Monica?
I am gonna give it an A- only because I was disappointed with Monica in it.
And God, I'm the harshest grader. I give it a B, a flat B.
Get
Because I
out
still think
right
I
now.
know, right?
Who are you?
Kick me off my podcast.
Enjoy spending the rest of the week fighting with folks in your
You can no longer host this show.
Have a good week,
And for the last
sweetie.
WandaVision episode. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for listening. If you liked Slayerfest 98, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can follow us on social media at SlayerFestX98. You can subscribe to our Patreon, where you get access to 3 to 4 monthly mini episodes a month and a bunch of other exclusive content. And you can follow me on social at IanXCarlos. Misha, where can everyone find you?
I'm at Misha Osherovich on all socials, and the only one in existence. Should be pretty easy.
And Monica, where can everyone find you?
Monica Breen on Twitter, I think. I don't know. Just look up my name, you'll find me.
And Alex, where can everyone find you?
I am Alex Kack on everything.
And Adam?
You can find me on Twitter at the Adam Sass, and you can also go to my website, adamsassbooks.com, and pick up my latest debut novel, Surrender Your Sons.
Cool. Novel.
Yay,
novel. Yeah.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.